Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm Tyler, and to finish up my 2020 series of Christmas movie reviews, I'm here to let you know that the original Black Christmas is No Perfect Movie. And for those who don't know, it centers around a group of sorority girls who are being stalked and murdered one by one during Christmas time. But as they and the police are trying to uncover who's responsible, what we as the audience realize, but they don't, is that the killer is hiding in their house the entire time. And part of the reason I wanted to check out this movie in particular in the first place was because I had heard so many great things about the main villain, Billy. And having finally seen it, I can safely say that director Bob Clark, cameraman Albert J. Dunk, really wish I was making that up, and voice actor Nick Mancuso, I believe, all three of them who play Billy at differing points in the film do a great job at creating such an intimidating and creepy presence of a villain without ever showing his face or even explaining why he was there to begin with no motivation given whatsoever, because that was the objective that they had the entire time. The audience members can each come up with their own possible interpretation as to what his motivation is and what it has to do with these sorority girls, and as a result, they'll end up frightening themselves just coming up with all these great ideas. Me personally, I don't really think that this is probably the most basic interpretation you can come up with this movie, but there are a lot of clues based on the amount of obscene phone calls that he gives towards these sorority girls and how he's seemingly reenacting himself in his childhood and his mother. I think that he's going after these women because in his mind, their rebellious nature has gone unpunished for too long. Meanwhile, he's had to suffer greatly at the hands of his own mother whenever he made the slightest mistake. And given that at its core, this is a feminist horror movie where every woman in this movie is fighting for independence in their own personal lives. The fact that they're being hunted down by a potential misogynist does fit the tone very nicely without ever coming across as preachy. I'm looking at you, Sophia Takal. So yeah, it's a pretty basic possible motivation, but it's still a really well executed one too. Now, outside of the main villain, while I can say that Black Christmas is a good film, it has good performances, it has good direction, I can't really say that I was all that scared by it. And it mostly had to do with certain characters and the way that their arcs were handled. But as per usual, I'm going to stick with the positives first. For starters, it's directed by Bob Clark, the same guy who gave us A Christmas Story and Baby Geniuses. Obviously, you wouldn't associate either of them with directing the original slasher movie, because this came out before Halloween, and you can kind of tell because there are so many POV shots of Billy wandering through the house, kind of like the original opening to Halloween where we only see a POV of Michael as he's killing people. It's not done shot for shot by any means, but you can definitely see the amount of influence that it has. But Bob Clark is really good at building up anticipation and suspense by getting you to look back and forth from certain areas of the house, certain characters, and what they see or don't see. And that's, in my opinion, such a scarier thing to look at. There are two shots in particular that I think are great examples of this. One of the first kills where a woman is entering the attic, and we cut back and forth from her entering the attic to a shot of her backside, but what she doesn't realize is that you can see Billy's hand holding up a weapon and he's getting ready to strike, and you're just sitting there wondering, what is he waiting for? What is she going to do next? Because he is absolutely quiet. He's really good at sneaking around the house and getting away with all of this stuff. And another shot in particular that doesn't use back and forth editing, because it puts all the information that we need in one shot. There are two women on the phone with the police chief because he's on their side. He's trying to help them tap the phone and discover where the calls are coming from. All the while, there's a shadow moving in the background, and it's so far away that there's no way in hell these women were going to be able to see the shadow. And you're just sitting there going, oh my god, is he about to strike, or is he moving a body around? What is he going to do? All of these shots raise so many important questions, and Bob Clark, back when he was at his best, in my opinion, did such a good job at handling the suspense. And wow, it really does bum me out that I wasn't actually that scared by this movie, but the technique was all there. And the performances, despite the fact that some of them sound cheesy thanks to some really outdated sound editing, they're all fairly good. Obviously, everyone remembers Olivia Hussey, Hussey. I have no idea how to pronounce it. Jess. Her main character is Jess. And she stands out not just for being the final girl of the movie, but because she has easily the darkest subplot throughout the entire film where she's pregnant, she wants to have an abortion, but out of respect, she tells her boyfriend, and her boyfriend becomes incredibly forceful and hostile as he's trying to really get her to reconsider. And considering that this movie was made during the Roe v. Wade era, it's insane how this movie has so many mature conversations that are not one-sided whatsoever about such a really tough but important subject matter. Because on one hand, yeah, he did have sex with her. It is technically his child too, and he definitely does want to have a family, and all of the original life goals that he had set in mind, he's willing to drop those in order to have a kid. But considering she's the one carrying the baby for 9 months, and she has life goals that she still wants to accomplish and hasn't changed whatsoever, it makes legitimate sense why anyone would side over one person over the other. But considering this is a slasher movie, it's definitely a great metaphor of how she is constantly living in fear of other people's disapproval, but she knows for a fact that she has a freedom to make her own choices, and seeing her figuratively and literally fight for her own freedom is absolutely riveting to watch. I can't remember the actress's name, but the sorority mom as the comic relief was absolutely hilarious. I love the fact that she's deep down, she is a genuinely kind person towards everyone, but she hates the fact that she has to be prim and proper to literally everyone she meets, even and especially if they're people that she doesn't think deserve the amount of positivity. So it makes her more private moments when she's all by herself come across as being incredibly more vulgar than her own students, which was absolutely hilarious. I loved it. She might have been the most likable character, not the most fleshed out. That's obviously Jess, and she's a much better character for it, but I don't know. I always liked it whenever the sorority mom popped up. And Nat Faxon, I believe, as the police lieutenant, miles above slasher movies, miles above Hitchcock movies, because even back then, it was normal to have police officers who were completely stupid just for the sake of moving the plot along, but this is the rare case of where a cop was actually smart to move the plot along, because it does actually raise the stakes and tension. It means that Billy has to be a lot more thoughtful in regards to how he goes around his killings now that he realizes that someone is onto him. And as opposed to most modern-day slasher movies where it's the dumb cop that's in charge and the subordinate is smart, except for Halloween where the one cop was legitimately a good, decent person, it was a change of pace to see the smart cop be the leader and the dumbass second in command, especially with the fact that the commander is so dedicated at his job to the point where whenever a dumb cop slows him down, this one guy in particular, he takes every chance he gets to insult his intelligence and wonder why it is he even keeps this guy around to begin with. So all three of those characters, in my opinion, are worth watching throughout the entire movie, and they definitely raise the stakes and tension whenever they're on screen. But the other characters, because there are quite a few, and for a while it is treated as an ensemble horror movie, there are so many sorority girls that I felt were either too thinly developed or just all around unlikable. They weren't the reboot unlikable. I should make that incredibly clear, and they're not even that preachy by any means. But they're still pretty bland. The opening, the girl who gets killed in the opening, the girl that causes the most amount of commotion, her parents come, some of the sorority girls get a little bit jealous. I struggle to remember that one girl's name. I just remember how she died because it was way too drawn out, and the end result was just a basic jump scare. The only thing that was frightening about it was that her body is the body that you see on the poster, and it's obviously a very creepy image, but her as a character, didn't really feel that much about her because we didn't get any time to learn about her. We get Lois Lane herself, Margot Kidder, as basically the smartass of the group. She's this rebellious alcoholic, and we learn through this very subtle phone call that the reason she is that way is because her parents, in her mind, don't give her any attention. So when the murder victim's parents come to visit the sorority, she obviously gets jealous and a little more outspoken, but as time goes by, as understandable as that motivation is, her behavior was just too mean-spirited to even find her as a love to hate character. By the time her arc was finished, I didn't really feel like there was any reason to care. And I know some slasher movies, some horror movies in particular, have characters that you want to root for to die. This was not the character that I wanted to root to die for. And last but not least, because I, for a while, didn't even recognize it was her, Andrea Martin as the more timid sorority girl. She's really just there to spell out how everybody's feeling about a given situation, and her lines were so corny, her delivery sounded stupid. It was just really hard to take her seriously. Even though it's Andrea Martin, I know she's talented, I know she's funny, and considering parts of this movie are a dark comedy, you would expect her to at least say something funny, but that wasn't really the case. Not every character was worth being scared for, so as a result, not every scare had a huge impact. But when it did have an impact, it was more than well worth it. Bob Clark did a really good job directing. All the actors who played Billy did a really good job. And the actresses who are given a good amount of depth and are very sympathetic, they're the reasons I stuck through it through the bitter end. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give the original Black Christmas a 3.5 out of 5. Guys, thank you so much for watching all of these Christmas reviews. Let me know down below what you thought of the original Black Christmas. Let me know what one of your favorite holiday horror movies are, because there are quite a few. Some of them I've covered before, some of them I'm waiting for other years to cover, because there are so many Christmas movies that I wanted to talk about this year, but I realized if I want to keep this going every year, I should really keep it down to a minimum. So there are some older classics that I'm definitely going to cover next year, some that just came out this year that I'll definitely cover next year, kind of with Klaus. Makes sense, right? Figures. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Be sure to stay tuned for more reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.